be?
I have no idea. Somebody's gun went off.
Why some state police agencies don't want to ditch these weapons.
This should have never happened.
Absolutely not.
This was 100% preventable.
We expose the state's most dangerous workplaces.
Who's next? I don't want anyone else to suffer the way my family suffered.
And how taxpayers are being burdened by problems in our jails.
We were negotiating the value of my sister's life.
The King 5 Investigator Spotlight starts now. Hello and welcome to the King 5 Investigator Spotlight. I'm Susanna Frame. At King 5, our investigative team is here to expose wrongdoing, from violations of civil rights of marginalized groups to waste and abuse in government. Our goal is to always enact change for the better in our communities, and we have a strong track record of doing just that. Every month, you can stream a roundup of our investigations on King 5 Plus. Tonight, we expose Washington's most dangerous workplaces, a list of companies across the state with the worst records of putting workers in harm's way. Kristen Goodwillie reveals how the state's top offender now faces a lawsuit after a father of 12 died on the job.
Dad is dead. Those two words, dad and dead, do not belong in the same sentence. My world just shattered.
Victor Voloshin's children say as a truck driver from Pasco, he was the hardest worker they knew. He immigrated from Ukraine 30 years ago and took pride in providing for his family. His kids never thought he'd lose his life doing just that.
I still can't wrap my head around what happened that day. I almost still don't believe it.
In the days before his death, on June 7th of last year, Victor had been hauling deadly cargo. He spent his last 48 hours driving a semi-tanker with toxic emulsified sulfur for Two Rivers Terminal. According to a lawsuit filed by the Voloshin family, a dispatcher ordered Victor to clean out the truck, a hazardous job he'd never been trained to do.
I learned that he got there around 4 p.m., started cleaning out the tanker by himself.
This security footage reveals Victor's last moments. He went into the tanker's manhole, completely unprotected. No safety gear, no supervision, no emergency plan. Victor died inside the truck, overcome by toxic fumes. Firefighters and family were called to the scene, forced to watch it all play out.
And that's when they came to us and told us that my dad has passed away.
Should this have even happened in the first place?
This should have never happened.
Absolutely not.
This was 100% preventable. And then I found out that they had previous incidences with injuries, with hurting other people year after year.
It was this kind of workplace safety failure that earned Two Rivers a distinction no company wants: to be a part of the state's severe violators list. These are the companies with the most safety violations issued by Labor and Industries. The top 10 include industries like roofing, logging, and asbestos management. At the very top of this list is the company that hired Victor to drive a semi-truck, Two Rivers Terminal. It ranks as the state's most dangerous employer since 2022, racking up 106 violations.
How do you feel, Lily, knowing that Two Rivers Terminal has the most violations of any company in the state?
It's just devastating.
The company's violations follow a deadly pattern, from failing to provide protective equipment and proper training to ignoring confined space regulations like those that led to Victor's death. Nearly half of all citations warn how serious these violations are, that employees can be seriously injured or killed. With all of these violations, you might be wondering, why is this company still in business?
So companies have rights just like people have rights. We have the ability to make places safe, but we don't necessarily have the ability to just shut them down. L&I
can issue fines. Two Rivers owes the state more than $1 million.
So yes, they can.
Employment law expert Liz Ford says it's a question of whether the fines are making any difference.
It appears the fines are not sufficient to deter the conduct because it's not deterring the conduct.
Victor's death was not an isolated incident. Just 1 year earlier, another employee fell 12 feet after exposure to the same toxic chemicals. He suffered life-threatening injuries.
It almost felt like history was repeating itself, that this company did not correct its mistakes, that all they cared about was their business. They don't care about people coming home.
I called, emailed, and went down to Two Rivers Terminal for a comment and have not heard back. We do know the company is disputing L&I citations and is trying to move the Voloshin family's lawsuit to federal court.
In my 41 years of being a lawyer, this is the most egregious failure of safety I have seen from a corporation.
Sim Osborne represents the Voloshin family in their wrongful death lawsuit against Two Rivers. He says the company knowingly ignored critical safety warnings.
This is a case that never should have happened. If Two Rivers had followed the rules and just had the most base safety practices, Victor Voloshin would never have died.
Victor was an entertainer, the rock of his large family. His children say the grief is unbearable. They worry most about their mother left without the family's sole provider. Children still live in the home without a father. 16 grandchildren will grow up without a grandfather.
Yeah, the first month after my dad passed, my mom asked me, "Can I go buy groceries? You think we have enough for groceries?" And that breaks my heart.
The family had no idea Two Rivers was the worst safety violator in the state. They say the company must change to prevent another family's devastation.
We have to bury him. He's not coming back. And that's such a hard thing to accept. But I do want justice.
Also this month, we reported some Washington police agencies are sticking to their guns, literally. The King 5 investigators were the first to report the State Police Academy has banned a handgun that's widely used by law enforcement agencies after complaints that the gun can fire on its own. As King 5 investigator Chris Ingalls shows us, some agencies that issue the gun are pushing back.
They're inside here. Over here. Thanks.
What's going on tonight?
A man in crisis at a grocery store in Kitsap County.
We've got the ladder right here. It'd be right easy to climb down. Yeah.
Sheriff's deputies responding to this call in April of last year couldn't convince him to come down from a cabinet.
We're not.
It's at this moment, when deputies pounce on the fallen man, that this turns into something more than a routine call.
Oh my God, what was that?
3 body cameras rolled as the sound of a gunshot rang out.
What just happened?
I have no idea. Somebody's gun went off.
Does he have a gun on him? We're all holstered.
Well, I'm saying I don't know if it went off in a holster.
None of the deputies had touched their weapons. Later, one of them realizes it was her gun that fired.
Okay, that's an empty shell.
That came out of your gun?
That just came out of my gun.
Your gun was in your holster.
My gun was in my holster. I felt it hot on my thing.
Do me a favor?
Yep.
Take a deep breath.
Yep. Okay. I'm good.
No one was injured, but this incident launched an investigation of the deputy's sidearm, the Sig Sauer P320 handgun, widely used by police and the U.S. military. Last month, the State Criminal Justice Training Center permanently banned the P320 at the academies that train all Washington law officers. As we reported, leadership determined this video shows a Yakima recruit's P320 firing and almost striking an instructor. Both men said the recruit's finger was not on the trigger.
What the hell?
The Training Commission's case adds to a growing number of claims nationwide that the P320 fires on its own, even when secure in a holster. But some police agencies that issue the P320 oppose the ban.
I'm Chief Wendell Shirley of the Bellevue Police Department.
At this meeting earlier this month of the Criminal Justice Training Commission, Bellevue Police Chief Wendell Shirley said the decision would be a financial and operational hardship. He wants officers to train at the academy with a gun they'll use on the job.
And would ask the commission to consider placing a temporary pause on this directive to allow for a more thorough discussion about the budget and the impact.
Bellevue Police declined repeated interview requests from King 5, but in emails obtained through public records, the department's firearms expert called the ban outrageous and said academy leaders haven't listened to a word we've said. A lieutenant wrote, "We have made the decision and stand by our choice of the Sig P320, and Sig has proved it cannot fire without a trigger pull." Police in Kirkland also opposed the ban, writing, "We are shocked by the Training Commission's action. We don't believe the data supports this decision."
I felt something like hot on my leg when that sound went off.
Indeed, there are cases where the gun appears blameless.
Self-check.
During the Kitsap Sheriff's probe, investigators noticed this on the body cam video. The deputy's handcuffs loose in her duty belt, likely from the struggle. This photo shows how a handcuff strand could have entered the holster, which they say was responsible for pulling the trigger.
We're having to rearm our whole sheriff's department. Because there's a malfunctioning firearm out there.
Nevertheless, 4 days after our original story aired, Kitsap County Commissioners approved up to $400,000. That will pay for more than 200 new model firearms and training for all officers.
We want our deputies to have a safe, dependable weapon. And, they've been watching these play out too. And then, on King 5 News.
Even though the P320 was not blamed here, Kitsap County says deputies shouldn't have one more thing to worry about in a job that's already full of danger.
I mean, obviously, there's plenty of case study here that says it's a defective firearm. Frankly, we need to get it off our deputies' hips.
Sig Sauer has not responded to our multiple requests for a comment, but on its website, it's posted a statement blaming the controversy on anti-gun groups and manufactured lies. I'm Chris Ingalls in the King 5 newsroom.
Over the last 4 months, the King 5 investigators have exposed the school lunch crunch. Thousands of school-aged children aren't getting enough time to eat their lunch. In this update from Chris Ingalls, changes are coming, but not anytime soon.
Okay, you can come in.
Lunchtime at school.
Do you want mashed potatoes and gravy?
It's become more hectic as schools feed more children free and reduced price meals. The longer lines mean less time to sit and eat. So now the Washington Superintendent of Public Instruction has issued this bulletin that updates seated lunchtime rules. Districts will be required to give K through 5th graders a minimum of 20 minutes once the students have received their food through the meal service line. Experts recommend at least 20 minutes of seated time to eat lunch. What do you think about that decision?
I don't agree with it, I'll be honest with you.
Shelley Witten, Deputy Superintendent of Battleground Schools in Southwest Washington, is one of dozens of administrators who opposed the new rule in a hearing earlier this year.
It's creating a mandate for school districts that in some cases they will not be able to meet.
School districts argue that adding even 5 or 10 extra minutes to lunch periods can require additional staff and cafeteria space, and it eats into academic class time.
Every time that we add something into schools, it's not simple. It's very complex.
The new rule targets K through 5th graders because that's the group with the shortest lunches, according to a King 5 survey of 31 districts last year. 19 of those districts had 20-minute lunches, including the time to stand in line, and 2 districts had only 15-minute lunch periods. The state already requires a half-hour recess for elementary students, so scheduling academics around lunch and recess is challenging. The state is cushioning the blow by delaying implementation of the new rule until the 2029 school year, more than 4 years from now.
So that is a first step in the right direction. I was surprised and disappointed at how long it's going to take for this to implement.
Megan Lim is the mother of 3 elementary students in the Seattle School District. All of them say they don't have time to finish eating during their 20-minute lunch periods. What does it mean for your kids?
What it means for my kids is they're going to keep complaining about being hungry.
Over the next few years, schools will have to figure out how to make adjustments. As for kids and parents,
I think our kids have learned to make peace with the fact that they just don't have enough time to eat at school.
Do you want mashed potato and gravy?
They'll have to live with the school lunch crunch for now. Chris Ingalls, King 5 News.
It was State School Superintendent Chris Rakedahl who made the final decision to impose the 20-minute rule.
Pretty clear that when kids get time to eat, especially if you'll put recess before lunch, right? So they play and then they come back. They sit down longer to eat. If they have recess after lunch, well, they eat the corn dog as fast as they can. They shovel the vegetables in the compost and they get out to maximize their recess times.
The superintendent said the 4-year delay for the new rules is to give the legislature more time to approve additional funding that districts may need to make the changes. The King 5 investigators have uncovered how taxpayers are footing the bill for problems plaguing our local jails. As lawmakers debate jail reform, critics argue improvements would cost too much. But as Taylor Mafendereski found, local governments are already paying millions.
How beautiful she is.
And this was actually the last time we were all together.
Paul Nelson and his wife would rather remember his sister Blair this way.
I like this one.
Laughing and surrounded by family. Not the way she died.
What hurts the most is that she died alone. And she died in a jail cell, a place she had never been.
Blair Nelson died at the Chelan County Regional Justice Center in 2021, about 15 hours after being booked on suspicion of a DUI. Her blood alcohol level was over 3 times the legal limit. This is jail surveillance video showing Blair's final moments alive, suffering from complications of liver disease and alcohol withdrawal.
Her tremors were so bad from detoxing that they were unable to feed her.
Court records claim a jail nurse never consulted a doctor, even though Blair clearly needed medical help, leaving her unsupervised for hours before she was found dead.
It's their duty to make sure that you're safe. They failed horribly.
For years, the King 5 investigators have reported on tragedies impacting Washington inmates like Blair and Javier Tapia. He lost his leg at the Pierce County Jail after a life-threatening infection when undiagnosed.
I feel they still took some of my freedom from me, leaving me in this state.
Despite having one of the highest death rates of local jail inmates in the country, Washington lacks statewide jail standards and oversight measures, and efforts to change that have repeatedly failed.
So the fiscal for that was...
For the second time in 2 years, concerns over cost...
The fiscal is a little alarming.
...killed a bill that would have created a statewide jail oversight body.
I think it's sad. I mean, what greater responsibility is there than taking care of someone?
Stand on those green footprints there.
Babysitting someone.
Jail leaders across Washington told us there's little they can do to improve jail conditions without extra funding from the state.
Cities and counties are going to pay the cost for that with more lawsuits.
A year after Blair's death, Nelson sued Chelan County, joining hundreds of others who've taken their fight for justice to the courts.
It does seem like someone somewhere did the math one day and said it is cheaper for us to defend the lawsuits than to actually just provide the adequate care in the first place.
We did our own math and for the first time ever have uncovered the financial toll on taxpayers. The King 5 investigators analyzed hundreds of legal claims against more than 40 Washington jails. We found in the last 5 years, local governments spent over $60 million to defend and pay out on more than 300 jail-related claims, ranging from lost property to inmate deaths.
I think that's way too high of a taxpayer price to pay.
Thurston County spent the most to settle a single case, over $7 million. An inmate claimed inadequate medical care behind bars left him paraplegic. On the Olympic Peninsula, jails in Clallam County and the city of Forks settled multiple claims of inmate sexual abuse by jail guards. And in Garfield County, a $2.5 million settlement led to this dilapidated jail's closure when a man's body went undiscovered for more than 18 hours after his suicide.
This was the night before.
Paul Nelson's lawsuit against Chelan County never made it to trial.
We were negotiating the value of my sister's life. It reduced my sister's 42 years of life to numbers.
The case settled last April for $2.5 million. A spokesperson for Chelan County declined an interview. As part of the settlement, the county denied liability in Blair's death.
Doesn't feel like justice at all.
What would justice look like?
Reform.
There are ways that we can reduce these
payouts or awards, but it's not necessarily with reform.
Vicki Raines is one of the leaders of an organization that pays out on jail-related claims for 24 counties in Washington. She says jails don't need oversight. They need money to get to the root of some of the biggest problems, like serious mental health challenges that jails aren't equipped to handle.
I would never say that $60 million in payout or settlement fees to individuals is because our jails are bad. We have a litigious society and people will go after where they think the money is. I would like to see the state put more money forward to assist the jails on the front end of things.
While our analysis of legal claims covered just 5 years of payouts, we found the cost to taxpayers is still climbing. Just last month, Javier Tapia, the Tacoma man who lost his leg in jail, settled a lawsuit against Pierce County for $1 million.
I feel relieved that Pierce County was accountable for what state they left me in.
Also this year, Chelan County settled a wrongful death suit with the family of this inmate, Joseph Verville, for $3.2 million. Verville, seen here in his cell, died while suffering from opioid withdrawal, less than 3 months before Blair Nelson died in the very same jail. For Blair's brother,
I think I hit my wall.
and countless others who got a piece of that 60+ million. It's not a win.
A good friend of mine, he's very wealthy. I said, how does it feel to hold a check that size? It felt dirty. I would rather have her back. This doesn't make me whole.
We looked at a lot of cases, and in almost all of them, the jails aren't admitting they did anything wrong. They just think it's the most economical way to resolve or avoid lawsuits. In the newsroom, I'm Taylor Mearfendereski, King 5 News.
That's it for the King 5 Investigators' latest spotlight. We'll be back next month with more investigations. In the meantime, if you have a tip for us, scan the code on your screen, or you can email us at investigators@king5.com. I'm Susanna Frame, and for all of the King 5 Investigators, thanks for watching.